me. I gotta get you up. Okay? I gotta get you up. Alright? Come on. Hey, come on. I know, baby. No, I know. Tommy, help me! No. Come on, baby girl. Come on, baby girl. I gotta get you up. Come on. Come on, get up. Come on, baby girl. Come on. What's going on, guys? Welcome to It Can't Be For Nothing, our Last of Us HBO review, guys. My name is Kyle, your host. Welcome to Project Potter, guys. Thanks for checking out the channel. Of course, like, comment, subscribe if you guys do like the content. What I'm going to do, guys, is review every episode of the Last of Us show. Last of Us, one of my favorite franchises of all time. One of the best video games ever made, guys. Last of Us 2, my favorite game of all time. So very excited. Love Pedro Pascal. Love Bella Ramsey in Game of Thrones. And Chernobyl is like one of my favorite series of all time too. So a lot of people are excited about this, guys. I would say this is like the most hyped or anticipated show on HBO since like Game of Thrones. Definitely this year, or I should say last year, since House of Dragon for sure. And for this one, guys, what I'm going to do is kind of talk about my favorite scenes, of course, and things I really liked, and maybe some things I didn't like. But then I'm also going to go through like the scenes that were like shot for shot from the game that I picked up on, and then just sort of what I expect going forward, and then my thoughts, maybe predictions going forward. So, or maybe things that differentiated from the game that I really like. So thanks for checking out the channel, guys, and let's go. I will say what this pilot episode did very, very well. It completely sold me on the world. This is the game that you love. We're going to have some shots that are straight out of the game. And man, it was so important with Neil behind the helm and the Chernobyl writers behind the helm and HBO. It's so important for them to get this right, because we've seen the bad video game adaptations, right? The Assassin's Creed. Sonic is probably the best one. Both of the Sonic movies, I think, are really good, actually. I wouldn't say really good. I'd say pretty good and a lot of fun. But there's not been a serious video game faithful adaptation. The Uncharted movie I haven't seen yet, but I heard that was like okay, like, you know, not great. But this one is getting so much hype, guys, and you know, The Last of Us is such a beloved IP, and that first game and the second game especially, they play like movies already. So it's like you got to be careful that you don't want to like. I don't think you could ruin the product, but you want to make sure that you're not oversaturating or like, you know, you're getting fatigue and, you know, sort of like we see Horizon right now, where it's like you're getting Horizon VR game, we got Horizon 2, and then you're getting Horizon TV show, and it's like, dude, we can't have too much of one thing. Like, too much of a good thing is still a bad thing. So this is a very, very interesting time where it's like, okay, video games are trying to be movies, movies are trying to be video games or TV, and it's like, we don't need that to happen, but it's cool when you can have like a piece that can complement the original art and expand on it. And so this first episode, guys, is very much like basically a recap or a new adaptation of the first, I don't know, hour and a half of the game. So this episode is about an hour and a half, and if you've played The Last of Us 1, spoilers, I guess, for Last of Us 1, you know, the whole outbreak starts, obviously Sarah dying, and then they are tracking down Robert, and yeah, I'd say maybe the first couple of hours of the game they kind of put in here, and then, you know, Joel gets Ellie at the end, and it's like, that's kind of where they go into the building, and then it ends with the awesome shot of the buildings kind of going over. I'd say kind of almost shot for shot, they kind of just recreated that. So this is like laying the foundation down. The scenes that I immediately knew it was like shot for shot from the video game, and I was so impressed. A scene, obviously, where Sarah gives Joel the watch. It was so great, and they even did the timing where he's like, how can you afford this? And she goes, drugs. And then I waited for it, and I was like, are they going to do the exact like line? And then she goes, I said hardcore drugs. And I was like, oh, dude, that was so good. I was like, that gave me a really nice like a warm fuzzy feeling because I was like, dude, they nailed it. And you don't want the show to be 100% from the script or 100% like a recreation, but they do a really, really good job of like putting in the big iconic moments. Like when they're driving through, first of all the scenes in the back of the truck I thought were so incredible that like I obviously this is the first time I was seeing it, but because I've played the game, I'm so intimate with the game that I was like, oh, okay, now they're gonna turn right here, and then the family's coming up, and like it was just really, really awesome to see how much it looked like the game, and it's insane that they put that much attention and love into that. And like I said, obviously, guys, Neil is super passionate, and I love The Last of Us in that world, so really cool to see that. But what I really liked, guys, is focusing on Sarah in the beginning, and it's funny because I was like so excited to watch this. So I was like, oh, Last of Us, I can't wait. And then watching the Last of Us TV show, you realize that, oh, I have to watch Sarah die again. And I have to watch Joel or Pedro Pascal embrace his dying daughter, and I have to relive that tragedy. And on one hand, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to go through that again. And then I'm starting thinking about Last of Us 2. But then on the other hand, you're like, oh, I'm so curious to see, like, you know, what kind of liberties do they take? How does Pedro do that? And that scene, guys, unsurprisingly just crushed it. Tommy comes over and saves Joel, and Sarah gets shot, and then he goes over there and he like crawls over. It's literally like shot for shot in my head. It's like I'm like the video games they playing in my head, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm wondering like, okay, is he gonna crawl over there? What's he gonna do? Is he gonna say he's gonna say baby girl? Is he gonna like cradle her? He cradled her, dude, just like he did in the game. And I was like, man, dude. And I was like so sad. And then the opening, or not the opening, but like the, you know, the intro starts up or whatever, and they have the music, and it's great. And obviously the difference is, guys, there's no spores in this one. And they were talking about how, you know, if there were spores in here, then we'd have to have everyone on a mask, and everyone's walking around mask, and then you don't have enough facial expressions. And poor Pedro Pascal just did The Mandalorian, and he's like, dude, I just want to show my face. And I thought Pedro was excellent as Joel. I know Bella as Ellie is like, everyone's like, oh, she doesn't look like Ellie. This is going to be weird. I wasn't entirely sold on Bella, and I think her performance was good. I don't know if it was great. And that's kind of a microcosm of this episode, where I thought this was a very good episode, and I thought there were things that I was just really impressed with. Like, they stayed faithful to the world, they set up the world. The quarantine zone, dude, looked exactly like it was right out of the game with the guys on the rooftops, and everything was just really, really good. Tess was a little bit different, but I liked Tess's attitude, and I thought she was a badass, and she didn't put up with anything. And I thought it was really interesting that she lies to Joel about how like Robert's guys beat her up. And I loved how Robert was like, hey, I'm worried about your guy. Like, he's so afraid of Joel already. And she's like, don't worry, I'll just lie to him and say like some guys jumped me. And I love that stuff. And we know that Joel is like, you know, he's drinking here, he's taking pills, he's worried about Tommy, but like we know in 20 years we don't know what happened with Joel. So when they jumped ahead, I was a little disappointed because I was hoping we'd see a little bit more of that, what happened in those 20 years, right? And it goes from Sarah dying to 20 years later. And that's exactly how the game is. And I'm like, I like the familiarity, but like, what happened in those 20 years, man? We don't know. And it's like, you know, the game skips ahead. So I was hoping maybe the show would expand on that. But they clearly just wanted to like, you know, full steam ahead and like lay down the bricks and be like, okay, you know this product, this is what we need to do. Once this world is established, then we can start doing different like pieces of the story. The scene in the beginning, first of all, I loved how Sarah was like just noticing like how things were strange. Like she was picking up on it when she goes to get Joel's watch fixed. You know, the cops are going by and the ambulances, and the guy's like, oh my God, all day this has been happening. And then the woman in the store, she like must know something that he doesn't. She comes out and she's like, you need to go. And he's like, well, I'm just going to fix this watch. She's like, I'm just going to take you 2 seconds. She's like, no, you need to go. She's like, we're going to close up shop. And he's like, it's 3:00. We don't close till 7:00. And she's like, we're going to close. And so that woman like knew that there was something wrong. But Sarah picks up on like everything. She sees the planes going overhead and she like looks up, and they did a really, really good job of her being like, is everything okay? Like, you know, is the news okay? And they're like, dude, everyone's fine. Like, you know, because you could tell that like there was something wrong, but everyone was like kind of like, oh, let's not overreact, like, you know, it's just a normal day. And it really made me think, like, if this were to happen, this is exactly how it would happen. You know, like people would be like, oh dude, don't worry about it, you know, like, oh, it's like, oh, there's a ambulance is going to the scene, cool, probably a car accident, happens all the time. You would never expect everything to fall apart like it does in The Last of Us. So I thought that was really, really well done. The scene where she goes in and then grandma just like, that's when she turns, oh my god, and she's like looking for the book or whatever, and in the background the grandma like simultaneously I think like dies and then also becomes infected. She becomes infected, and then there's a really cool poster. I think it's the little girl who I was like, is this supposed to be Ellie? But it was just supposed to be a random girl, and that was a sad scene. She looks up and there's a poster and it says like, you turn if you get bit in your head and neck within like 1 to 2 hours. If you get bit in your torso, it's like 12 to 14. And then if you get bit in your leg, it's like 24 to 48. And we've never really explored that in The Last of Us. You know, there's been parts that like throughout the environment, there's like notes and stuff, and it says like, oh, how quickly do you turn? And I don't know if Joe and Ellie talk about it in the game, but it was like so crazy to see like, oh, this is like, it's like a when you go to get like a health checkup or something, and it's like, you know, basically like it's like health information, but it's like, this is how quickly someone will turn if you get bit in these areas. And it's like, that made it very, very real and really sold the world for me. But that poor girl, dude, this girl like stumbles into town, and then they like they're like, oh, just a little pinch, and they're like lying to her, and they're like, we're gonna get you more toys and all that. And then they scan her neck and she's infected, and so they like euthanize her. And I was like, oh my god, that's so sad, dude. And then they cut to them throwing all the bodies and burning the bodies in like the middle, and Joel's like working there, and the one girl's like, I can't do this, it's a kid, and you know, Joel has to do it. But man, they really, really sold the world. But pick up Ellie at the end, and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm killing time. And she's like, what the hell am I supposed to do? And he's like, I'm sure you will figure that out. And I was like, that was right from the game as well. And there's a few different ones, and for the most part they stuck to it. I mean, when they go outside and they're sneaking around at the end, and Ellie's like, holy shit, I'm actually outside. I was like, okay, like, you know, because she like gets excited when that level first loads. And there's a bunch of little things like that, but I like how it was different enough where, you know, the whole scene where they almost get hit by a car, and I forget how their car turns over, but in the video game they get hit from the side, and then that's when like Sarah's leg is broken, and then like Joel has to carry her. But in this one, they like fake you out because like they're backing up, and then they're like, oh my god, watch out, and then like a car comes in and almost hits them. But I will say, guys, they had a plane crash in this one, and that was nuts looking. That was insane. Like, they look back, and she's like, Daddy, and then she looks back, and then the plane just comes down, and I was like, oh my god, this is insane. So I really liked that they changed it up a little bit, but they had like kind of shot for shot too of things exploding, and in my head I'm like, okay, and there's like green explosions off the distance. And when Sarah wakes up, she goes out and she's like, Dad, and she literally says it just like Ashley Johnson says it as oh, not Ashley Johnson, sorry, because that's not Ellie. Whoever voices Sarah says Dad, and it's like the same way, and they recreated the house perfectly. And then the dog goes out to the window, and it's usually like the guy or whatever, the neighbor. And then I thought Joel was going to come in the bottom, but then they changed that and he comes into the truck. But I was really impressed with, again, how much they sold the world and they stuck to the world. And obviously, like, this is Neil's baby. Like, he created this world. He loves The Last of Us. It's as good as it is for a reason. And so I thought they did a really good job of sticking to that, but also kind of changing things up a little bit. Like the grandma scene that was so terrifying when she's just in the back, like she looks like that, and I'm like, oh my god, dude, I don't want any part of that. And then obviously when she goes in and tries to return the dog home, Sarah goes down and tries to return the dog home, and then she stumbles upon like the husband he's like and then like she's eating everyone, and yeah, obviously things get crazy. Also, I didn't like how quickly, I mean, I loved it because it was super accurate, but how quickly the zombies or whatever, the runners, like, they like look up so quickly, and like the movement, oh, so it was creepy, dude. And then like when the guy's chasing Joel, how they did it, but he's like literally running, and he's like out of control and like running into stuff and like flailing around, and I thought that was so perfect because it looked just like the game. And I really, really like that they did that stuff. And obviously when they're crawling through the tunnels and stuff, and yeah, everything was really great. And it's funny because like if I go over here and think about giving this one a score, guys, I was thinking like, oh, the episode didn't really like blow me away, and there were certain moments that were really, really great, and I was like, wow, that looks so good, and I can't believe how much they recreated this. But then I'm thinking about it, I'm like, it was really good, but you know, we know the story, and I don't want to like unfairly give it a poor score because like I already know, like I don't want to be that person that's like, oh well, it's not a video game. And it's like, well, obviously, dude, it's going to be different, but it's so faithful to the game while also kind of making its own thing. And now that the first episode is in the books, and now that like they've established the world and established these characters, and it's like now Joel and Ellie are together and Tess is there, and I know what's going to come up next. I'm curious to see what they change and what they stick to, and I'm sure the big scenes they're still gonna stick to it. But I'm also like, I wonder if they're gonna change anything for like any of those iconic moments. I wonder if they're gonna like put their own spin on it. And I'm sure Neil's got something cooked up, so I'm really excited to see that. But I want to say I'm gonna give this one an 8.7 for the pilot, guys. This is a really, really good, a great adaptation. I felt like it was missing a little bit of the drama from the guys who wrote Chernobyl, and it didn't quite feel like it had the HBO polish for the entire time. They open up with that 1968 thing, but it like they had Big Head. Guys, I didn't expect to start The Last of Us, and then Big Head is over here, you know, talking about, you know, how, well, we basically be screwed. He's like, we'd lose if like this fungus broke out, and they talk about the pandemic and all that stuff. And it was interesting to see like that. And then they cut to 2003. So it's like 1968 and then 2003. But it was just kind of a goofy vibe in the beginning. And I was like, this is kind of strange. And I thought about Chernobyl, and I thought about how strong those interactions were when like the plant's going off in the beginning, and there's like, they're cutting through and they're like, oh my God. And it's like, there's disaster right away. But this one didn't hit like that. So I was like, okay. But obviously with the pilot, like, I think the show's only going to go up from here. So with that being said, guys, I think it was really engaging. You know, it was like an hour and a half, but I didn't feel the runtime. I was in it the whole way. It's just that like I knew what was coming for the most part. So I was more just curious to see like, okay, what did they change? What's the same? And I will say every single time it was the shot for shot, man, like it got like a smile. I had a big goofy smile on my face. Like I was like, man, this is really cool that they did this. So I'm sure we'll get a better structure as we go on with these reviews, guys, but these are kind of just my initial thoughts, trying to touch on some scenes that I know were straight out of the game, and I'm so intimately familiar with the game that I'm like, okay, I'm going in my head and I'm thinking like, okay, this is coming up next, and I'm sure they're gonna have scenes where they're down like underground with the subway and everything's dark and damp, and the clickers I've already seen from like promo shots and previews, like it looks incredible, and there's all like practical effects. And the one scene when Tess and Joel are in there, and Tess is like, oh my God, that guy wasn't there before, and they shine the light on the infected that's like into the wall. Dude, it looks absolutely unbelievable, like almost better than the game. Really excited to see where they go from here. And like I said, now that they have everything established, I think episode 2 and beyond are just going to be so good. So I really enjoyed my time. It didn't necessarily blow me away in the sense of like, wow, I cannot wait till episode 2, but I blown away at the level of care and detail and how carefully crafted this was and how faithful it was to the video game. So, which I figured it would be, but you never know, right? And like you see these reviews coming out and it's like, oh, this is gonna be amazing, and I think it will be. And I think this is just kind of like this is probably going to be the worst episode of the season, I think. And you know, if this is the worst one, then we're in for a hell of a ride. So super excited. I can't wait for next Sunday, really, I guess. So thanks for checking out the channel, guys. Thanks for checking out the pilot episode of It Can't Be For Nothing. This will probably be more structured next week, and I won't be all over the map, guys. But appreciate you stopping by. Like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, guys, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.
So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out. But man, can't deny that view.